Ideology is like a cancer. It doesn't kill you per se, but it stops you from being able to look at objective reality and really think for yourself. Does this policy work? With ideology in your mind, if you are controlled by a strict, dogmatic idea, then you are never going to be able to say, hey, this doesn't work. Hey, this part does work, but that part doesn't work. We need to improve this. We need to change this. Ideology stops you from thinking for yourself. It is the most destructive force humanity has ever known. Hello everyone, I am Eric Alden. Welcome to Our Dark History, where we discuss the darkest people, places, and events in human history. Today, we're going to be talking about ideology and how it creates certainty in the minds of people who are ideologues, people who strongly believe some kind of rigid interpretation of reality, and how it's actually not just detrimental to the individual, but it's detrimental to society. Ideology is really powerful. But let's start with the dictionary definition. It's a system of ideas and ideals, especially one which forms the basis of economic or political theory and policy. It's a rigid interpretation of reality. Ideologues, people who support some ideology in one way, shape, or form or another, they ultimately take a single individual truth and they expand it to every asset of life. That is really, if you look at any political extremist, whether they were a Marxist or a National Socialist or a fascist or, really anything else, anything taken to its extreme becomes this rigid thing that just ruins everything, right? Like, you can have truth in your ideology. That's good and well. Like, there can be truth to what you're saying. But if you take it to the extreme, you lost your point. It doesn't matter anymore because, we're living in a world that's dictated by, people who have this one specific truth that they hold on to. Look at medieval Europe, right? The only truth that mattered in that society was Christianity. There are other elements of life that are important to address, like the free market and not having a corrupt government and maybe people should have a say over who rules them, really good ideas. And by medieval Europe being completely dominated by Christianity, it doesn't take away from any of the value that Christianity provides. But what it really does is it takes away from the opportunity for all these other truths to expose themselves to people through, just being, just through simple exposure, right? Once you get a taste of the free market, you say, oh, wow, you let people go out and start their own businesses and all of a sudden we have a wealthy nation, 100 years later. What do you know? It's a pretty cool thing. However, there are just a lot of downsides to different ideologies and people who take them to the extreme. So let's look at one very popular example, Marxism, because I think it's not controversial, right? We can all agree that the Marxist interpretation of reality is a little warped, right? Class conflict, people that are of a higher class banding together to steal from the lower classes. Don't get me wrong, there is truth in it, right? It wouldn't have been such an influential ideology throughout time if it was completely false, right? Imagine someone was just, the sun doesn't exist. There is no sun. You try spreading an ideology like that, guess what? It's really hard to straight up lie to people that hard. Very difficult. However, you have a little bit of truth in there. That's when it starts getting a little tricky. That's when you run into the issue of people, taking this one truth and expanding it to every issue, right? Because, let's say you were to talk to a Russian peasant who was working in a factory before the Russian Revolution. He probably would have told you that, yeah, I work really hard. I work like 16 hours a day, every day of the week. My family doesn't have enough to eat. My kids are starving. They're really skinny. My wife is always stressed out because, she has a million different things going on. Life was really difficult. And, Russian society needed a little bit of workers' protection. Now, does that mean that, Marxists should control the entire state? Well, we saw how that turned out. Gulags and how many millions of Russian civilians died and how many other deaths from communism. It's a very destructive thing. But again, it's just taking one small snippet of truth, and it is taking that and just, putting it on, applying that lens to everything that you look at. I mean, if you look at everything through a Marxist interpretation, you're going to be living in like kind of a cynical, weird world. I mean, you're not going to really see people that can, different groups, right? I mean, this is part of the reason that there's so much division going on in the Western world right now, because, there's this whole segment of society that's like, oh yeah, the different races, and there's always going to be racial conflict, and we'll never be able to integrate. Like, there are dozens of examples of people who just put race aside. Like, we don't have to go to war with each other, to find out who's tougher or whatever, right? Like, the Marxist interpretation of everything is inherently conflict. It's about we're all going to fight for materials. Well, don't get me wrong, there's some truth in that. There is truth that people fight for resources. Not always, though. Not always, and it's not the only thing. Some people, maybe virtue is what they're really after. Think about people that are, true Christians, right? Because I know there's a lot of people that call themselves Christian, but let's say you're a true Christian. You really imitate Christ. You don't have a lot of money. You donate it all to charity. You do good to everyone. You don't judge anyone. You're that kind of Christian. Well, that kind of goes against this whole Marxist interpretation of reality. So, well, there goes, your little bit of an argument there. And there are always exceptions to every single ideology. Right? Now, let's look at another one that's really popular in the United States. Libertarianism. Now, I would actually call this an ideology. I know there's some debate over whether or not it is an ideology, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it is. Because it's really, it fits this definition. It's a system of ideas and ideals that form the basis of economic policy. That's what libertarianism is. Less tax, more business, right? That's kind of how the saying goes. However, you also have some of these other truths, like, well, if you don't let the state get involved at all, well, sometimes businesses run amok and control the state. Look at Amazon. Amazon is in this really weird position where they control so much of American politics and global geopolitics in different countries. And it's like Jeff Bezos is the richest guy on earth, or, he's at least up there. And that is just an insane thing to do. And now, if you look at their business model, part of the reason that Amazon is as successful as it is because it takes profitable parts of the business and then it funnels that money into different elements that aren't profitable. And then it can just get rid of the competition, because if you can operate at a loss, like if you can operate in an industry where you're not making any money, you're going to starve out the competition. That's all you need to do. From Amazon's point of view, it's a brilliant strategic move. Why wouldn't you do that in every industry you can? Well, if you take the libertarian route, well, you're just going to have to lay down and let Amazon control the earth. It's going to be the United States of Amazon, right? Jeff Bezos is going to be the president or whatever he would, it's just one of these weird things. Whoever controls that company would have more influence than people that actually control the countries where, it operates. And that's not necessarily the answer either. Now, I say this as someone who has libertarian leanings. Like, I think free markets are good. Free markets, free ideas, free people. Those are generally good things. However, and there's always going to be a however with every single ideology, every single idea that's out there. There's always a however. Specifically with libertarianism, the state sometimes needs to come in and say, you know what, maybe this one business shouldn't control like 10 different industries, right? I mean, the reason Amazon can operate as a streaming platform is because they make so much money, on this different element of their business. So they can starve out, so they have a competitive advantage in streaming. And then they also have a competitive advantage in, selling books and third-party retailers. And don't even get me started on them promoting their own stuff. If you see Amazon's Choice, well, it's because that's their own product they're selling. It's not, of course it's Amazon's Choice. It's their own product. Of course you would pick your own product to be the best one on the entire search section, right? If you're searching for bikes, there's like Amazon's Choice for bikes. Well, made by Amazon, not by third-party sellers. What do you know? So I don't mean to talk so much about Amazon, but I think it's just a really good example and demonstrates what is wrong with libertarianism. And that's not to say that, everything in libertarianism is wrong. Again, I have a lot of leanings where I think, the free market is generally a pretty good thing. People should be free to spend their money how they want and whatnot. The non-aggression principle, very good idea. But, there are these exceptions that sometimes it creates a difficult situation. And the idea that we're going to have one idea that, we can just have this one golden rule and we're never going to have to think for ourselves ever again. Like, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work, man. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. You can't have like one rule and one interpretation that solves all the issues forever. Unfortunately, if you want things done right, you have to think. You have to really apply different ideas and really come to an objective truth. And again, it goes back to this idea. Ideology is going to stop you from looking at things objectively. If you're a libertarian, well, you're just going to like ignore the fact that Amazon controls so much of the world's wealth, so much of the world, so much influence, right? You're just going to ignore that. And, again, it goes back to, Marxists, right? They're going to ignore all the crimes of the Soviet Union, right? I mean, you see a lot of people that are like, oh, well, Stalin didn't kill that many people in the Gulag. Like, I mean, if you have to fight about the numbers, man, it's like, you're just not doing yourself any favors. You just got to be objective about this stuff. Be honest. Really, that's all I'm asking for here. And this is really bad for society. Look at what happened in World War II. That is what happens when you have rigid interpretations of reality for every single issue in the world. It's bad. People suffer. People die. People get, holocausted. They get gulagged. They get sent to die in some war that, they wouldn't otherwise be fighting. It's really tragic to think of how many lives were just completely wasted for what? Because some people think that, there's one idea that can govern the entire world. Like, it just doesn't work like that, man. It doesn't work that way. So here are a couple of examples. So it just clouds your judgment, right? And it requires, like I was saying before, zero critical thinking skills. I mean, you want to find someone that's really stupid? Find a hardcore ideologue. Someone who staunchly believes in communism or libertarianism or fascism or like whatever other ideology there is. It's their absolute. It's their answer for everything. The worst part of it all is that it creates more problems than it fixes. If you create a Soviet Socialist Republic where all the workers have equal rights, well, you just destroyed any opportunity for economic growth and development. Look at Eastern European nations. They're still suffering economically because of the decisions that were made by people generations ago. Generations ago, people were like, you know what, this Soviet thing, communism is not so bad. And now they're, great grandsons and whatnot are, poor. It stinks. And it's actually really sad. And you got to just think about it, with every single issue, there are certain truths to every side. And you really have to do a lot of research and a lot of thinking before you can really say anything definitively. This is why I really try to avoid people who, the political outrage types. The kind of people that they just have an answer for, well, if I was just the president, well, I'd be able to fix all these issues. No, you wouldn't. You would be in the exact same position that all the goofy leaders that we have right now are in. If I'm going to be honest with you, there are two big reasons that you should avoid becoming an ideologue by any means. Any means. Do not ever become an ideologue. Number one, because it's bad for society. There will be another genocide or a Holocaust or a Holodomor or more gulags, concentration camps, whatever it is. If enough people become converted ideologues. And number two, there's a personal advantage to not becoming one. You are a smarter person for not becoming an ideologue. Again, people who believe in rigid ideologies are stupid. They need one rule and one idea to control their entire lives. And this is part of the reason why open and honest Western democracies have actually been such a really liberating tool, because we can actually bring attention to all of the issues that, people need to wake up to, right? If we were controlled by some kind of one-party dictatorship, like it is in China, well, all of the political issues that concerns, that one party would be dealt with. I mean, imagine a country ruled only by Republicans. That's no fun. That's actually very bad. Very bad. You need some Democrats. You need someone with a different point of view who see different issues with different classes or different parts of the economy or national politics or whatever it is. You need different people, their different points of view, because, personally, there are some issues that not everyone is just going to care about. You need some people to be part of your society or your country to care, let's say about homeless people. Because, if everyone's like you, no one cares about them. Maybe you're a selfish libertarian. I mean, what happens to those homeless people then? Well, they die. And that's really not a good thing. That's actually very sad. So, having different people support different points of view, very good for democratic, Republican-styled governments where, the people generally rule themselves. Now, of course, the government does rule us. We can have a whole debate on that another time. But let's take a look at the political compass. Because I think any of the major ideologies that control people stem from one of these four categories, right? So there's the authoritarian right. That's where you get, anything from fascism to reactionaries, people who are, the medieval European types, the 1500s, where, the Catholic Church basically controlled all of society. That's not necessarily the answer either. However, religion is important too. Then there's the libertarian right. I've already bashed them enough. I'll give you guys a break. And then there's the libertarian left. And, I don't even know what you would say as far as an ideology is concerned. Maybe the anarchists or whatever, but they kind of had a hard time forming any kind of united front against anything, well, because they're anarchists and they're kind of inherently disorganized. So maybe that's why we've never had a serious issue from the libertarian left. And then there's the authoritarian left, and, well, everyone knows that's where Stalin ranks on the political compass, and understandably so. And we know what happened under Stalin. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is why you should really, really second guess any kind of certainty you have if it comes from ideology. Ideology is not the answer to, many issues, let alone one issue. Let alone one. If you can find a real, objective, true answer to a political problem, political, social, economic problem, go sponsor some legislation, man. Write your senators if you have good ideas, right? If not, be like the rest of us. Let's learn together, figure this stuff out, drop the ideology and the, certainty that we all seem to have these days. And let's come together and find solutions to the problems that we all face. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.